Your audio is
Audio
good.
sounds
You're being
good.
recorded.
You can
We'll
start
give
whenever.
Josh this. Yeah, we'll give Josh. We'll give it. You know, we normally give it 2 or 3 minutes. Just let people join. The attendee count is climbing, but we'll give it a little bit more.
Okay, no problem.
I'll give Josh a chance too. There you go. Got Josh back.
Yes, I think so. I'm trying to get myself to show up on the video so that I can see how I'm framed. But other than that,
You are framed perfectly, Josh. If that helps.
Perfect. That's all I need to hear.
Awesome. We just said, well, we'll give people another minute or so, and then we'll kick it off. This is the part where we tease sometimes, Josh. We try to, well, you've seen the fun we have with WebEx, but we figured if one day we can actually get like waiting music playing to cover up that 2-minute stretch. So for the people on the line, if you have great ideas for WebEx music, drop that afterwards in the chat part for us. What's your favorite wait music while we get the last part going?
I'd have to go with the classic elevator music, Sade, Smooth Operator.
There you go. I like that. That's awesome. Excellent. Evo, the attendees climbed again a bit, and we're still climbing. So there we go. I think we can, let's kick things off. By the time we get to the important people with Josh, we'll be good to go.
Perfect. Well, thank you everybody for joining. We are live. We're starting the executive fireside chat with our folks from CDW and Palo Alto today. The topic is how the evolution of detection and response is impacting modern security operations. I'm truly excited to do this today with this team and have these amazing people on the line and be able to go deeper into the detection and response side of the house, which is an area that's been highly discussed lately. So I'm really excited to do this. I'll go through our high-level agenda, what we're doing today. I'll do a quick introduction of who CDW is and what we're doing in the security market, and how we continue to serve the security community and the clients that CDW, the huge number of clients that CDW has, and then we'll get right into the fireside chat. I've got a number of questions that I'm going to pose to Josh Zalonis, who is our guest here today, and Theo Van Wyck as well. They'll do a little bit of introduction. I'll moderate that piece. We'll have 10 minutes for Q&A at the end, and I've got an exciting thing to offer at the very end, which is more of besides the fact that you're learning lots today here, you may walk away with something way more tangible than knowledge today. So we'll get to that piece at the end. So hang around, and there's something special at the very end. So to get started, if you're not familiar with CDW, you may have seen our name and brand in a number of places. Sorry, that slide likes to jump. Might be a timing thing there. CDW's, we're across 9 locations across Canada. We've been 25 years in the Canadian market, so definitely not new to this market. We do $1.2 billion of revenue And we have 230 account representatives doing selling across all areas, right? We're focusing specifically on security here, and security is a big piece of what we do, but CDW does a lot more than that. And that's the fantastic piece of this, is that we get to be doing security and growing a security practice within this really high, highly valuable environment with, clients ranging from, small to medium to large to very large across the world. So lots of visibility and lots of exposure, lots of clients. You see 27,000 clients and plus, and also being part of this, 178 in the rank in the Fortune 500. But really, I mean, what we're here to talk about, and all this does is really give us horsepower to push what we do from a security perspective, and the fantastic partners that we have. So what is our approach to security? We wanted to make sure that when we got into security, we weren't just doing it for the fact that this seems to jump. We're not just doing it for to fill a product side that's important, but that's not really what we're here to do primarily. It's really to help you as a client understand your risk, build a security, an effective security program, identify and then source top security talent, and help you find the right the gaps within your environment and fill those with the right controls, be it on the endpoint, be it on the firewall side, be it on the server side. Help you carry that conversation through. So explain to your board members why you're doing security the way you're doing, and justifying that spend is really important. That's where that prepare column, we like to talk about prepare, defend, respond as the roadmap that clients will go through. Some of them are already further ahead, but when the prepare side is risk advisory services is a big piece of it. So doing things like vulnerability management, doing things like vulnerability assessments, penetration testing, and conducting audits and helping you conduct audits. It's really what we do on the prepare side, which is really quite firewalled from the product side, which starts to come in during the defend phase. So the defend phase is when we can bring in architects to say, now that you understand what your security roadmap should look like from a high level perspective, let's find the right technology. Let's make sure that we're buying the right technology for the right reasons. And that allows you to justify that spend like I talked about. So being able to bring things over and have the right people implement the right technology and implement those robust defenses, leading technologies, and making sure that you understand visibility and control within your environment. So quite good from a carrying the conversation through and making sure that you're justifying that. So now, once that's how do you bring that into operations? That's where our security operations center comes in. So defend covers more of a professional services and implementation of controls, whereas respond is more of our operational services. How do we make sure that on a day-to-day basis, you don't have to worry about creating your own security operations center, hiring your own people to do this? We have the ability to help you carry that, so you can focus on the more important things and do your and we can do the day-to-day monitoring and increasing visibility within your environment. So that is, my maximum of 5-minute introduction to what we do from a security perspective. But our great partner here today is what we really want to talk about. And I'm going to pass things over to Theo, who can talk about Palo Alto and what we do with Palo Alto Networks. So Theo, welcome, and take it away.
Perfect. Thanks, Ivo. As I struggle for the mute button, it seems to be a common thing these days. So first of all, just thank you everyone for joining with us today. Ivo sort of laid out the prepare, defend, respond. The reality is we really built that out to have something a little bit more tactical, make it a little bit more easy to digest. And when we did this back in the day, we looked at partners that could support us. And it was actually at a talk in Toronto that Nir Zook from Palo Alto came on stage. And he had a really interesting discussion point. He said, I want my partners to be vendor independent, not vendor agnostic. And that really stuck with me. And you actually did a really interesting part where you explained that agnostic means not having an opinion. and we definitely have an opinion. Like we have a subset of partners, but we definitely pick the partners that we feel can make a difference to our customers and brings the right solutions and the right messaging to the market. And as such, 5 years ago, or actually 6 years now, when we started off the security journey, Palo Alto was one of our first partners that we started out. And for you that have been around and known Palo Alto a long time, that was PAN-OS 3.0 that we really kicked things off with. And I know how far things have come since then. But so we built our relationship. We grew with Palo Alto. That eventually morphed into managed services. It was really all around next generation firewalling at first. Later on, Traps came in. We picked up Traps. And then the Palo Alto ecosystem exploded as Palo Alto gained momentum, and trying to make sure that, or making sure that they have the relevant solutions. And since then, it's really been a journey for us to grow with them. And we've tried to very closely align our business units just for the synergies that so clearly exist. And so in the process, we're very proud of the fact that we are Palo Alto's #1 partner in Canada, and we have been so for the last 4 years. So that's a very big deal for us. With CDW in the US, we've actually won partner of, last year we won partner for North American Partner of the Year. Actually, sorry, 2 years ago, just be clear on that one. But the reality is, so CDW as a global organization has been aligned with Palo Alto and is doing really great things. But up in Canada here, we're sort of very proud that we were first to partner up with Palo Alto and make a difference in the world. We're also a Canadian Diamond partner, which is really special for us. Sivo, next slide, please. We can roll over. I'm going to move through these relatively quickly now. We are an ATC for Palo Alto. So in Canada, we are the authorized training center. So if you need training for your teams or anything, definitely work with us there. We also are one of the, I guess, 1 and 2 partners that hold 3 designations. So both in specialization in SASE and Prisma Cloud and Cortex as a partner. So again, just talking to the fact that we're evolving with this ecosystem, we're seeing Palo Alto make all the right moves as we're encountering them, and so it's a natural alignment. We're MSSP authorized, and then we're also home to Canada's only Cyberforce Guardian, and as of this year, not the only, but one of Canada's rare Cyberforce heroes. So just super excited again about being close to Palo Alto on that. Next slide, please, Ivo. And then in terms of certifications, these are numbers on the screen. We'll leave you with this. Suffice it to say that we're deeply certified through the roadmap. We stay very close. We're super excited. And although I see there's a slip there, that was supposed to be 14 pre-sales resources. So good news, it's more than just Ivo that can talk about Palo Alto there. But our 14 pre-sales resources are distributed nationally from Vancouver all the way through to, with our latest hire, having Palo Alto knowledge all the way out to Halifax. So truly looking to bring that message universally to Canada. Ivo, I'll hand it back to you at that stage.
Sounds good. And I think this is the part of the presentation where we've been really looking forward to. And I'll stop sharing my screen because I want to make sure that we get full screen view of our faces as we start with the fireside chat. It's truly an honor to have Josh here with us today. I will not do justice to introducing you, but I can definitely, I'll do my best. Just talk about some of the if you can introduce yourself and bring us tell us a little more about yourself, that'd be fantastic, Josh. Thank you.
I'd be happy to. So I'm Josh Zelonis. I joined Palo Alto Networks in August of last year, and I am currently field CTO and evangelist here. Prior to joining Palo Alto Networks, I spent 4 years at Forrester as a principal analyst, where I was responsible for covering all things threat detection and response. What does that mean? Well, basically any technology that has a light that turns on when things start to go sideways, and everything that you do in response to it, from your SOC operations to potentially having to escalate to a third-party IR provider. And then I guess prior to that, and one of the things that I've been intimately working with over the last almost decade has been EDR. All through my time at Forrester and whatnot. I'd actually founded an EDR company back in 2013, so I guess that's about 8 years ago. So needless to say, I've been looking at the space for a while, and I'd love to talk about how it's evolved and where it's going.
Fantastic. That's exactly what we're planning to do here today. So it's going to be quite good, quite interesting. I have got a good number of questions, and I look forward to getting you guys talking about it and getting that discussion going. Theo, you've already introduced yourself to some extent, but it'd be great to hear more about your background. Oh, you're on mute again, Theo.
I knew it. See, I had to be that guy again. Like, that's just my role today, guys. Setting the bar low, so it's good for you. Great to meet everyone. Theo Van Wyk, Head of Cybersecurity and Solutions Development at CDW Canada. So just really help build the security practice from scratch. We've developed it over time, and today I steer everything surrounding solution development, partner selection, making sure that we bring the solutions to the market that our customers require. And then, yeah, that's really sort of, in my new capacity, that's also been expanded. I have the privilege of having input in cloud and other areas. As you've seen with Palo Alto, as the product sets evolve, security is getting woven into all the other elements of that fabric. And so I get to provide input and guidance in that area as well.
Perfect. So, I think that, now that EDR has become, I don't want to say household name, but it's definitely becoming a common name in the market, in the security market. Josh, what do you think are the biggest challenges you see in the industry today? And how has this impacted the need for security?
Oh boy, we're starting off with a softball, huh?
That's right. That's right.
Well, the challenge is as it always is, that we have limited resources, and we're essentially going against adversaries that, while they may not have the same limited resources that we have, you might not want to say they have unlimited resources, but for the most part, these are very well-funded adversaries, and so the level of sophistication coming at us and the way that we've aligned and leveraged our security budgets is really critical to our being able to go and combat these attacks. And when we talk about budgets, there's the technology and the people, and a lot of the time you hear that people will blame technology, or people will blame people. It's hard to hire people. There's too many false positives. There's too many alerts. There's such a dynamic that's happening in the market that, and has been, frankly, for ever, basically, that what the important thing for us to try to get to, I would say, is proactive, being proactive in what we're able to do. And so, maybe the summary to the first question here is just to say that, the biggest problem is that we don't have the bandwidth to be proactive.
Yeah, and that, it has absolutely been a problem since we got into this business, which, may vary between, 10 to 15 to 20 years. And that budget question has always been, a big piece that I know we handle a lot of that early conversation on the CDW side when we talk about risk assessments, and we talk about identifying threats within a client environment. Theo, any more challenges you want to add? Any more thoughts?
I think, I align with what Josh says there. It's catching up with the velocity of the market. I think if I look at the history and the evolution of a lot of security elements, especially in Canada, it was done by IT. Like, there was a long time where security was viewed, especially around computers and networking communications, as an IT related item. IT was generally staffed by engineers. And so, we saw that general knee-jerk reaction of going, solving any of those problems with a technology tool set. And I think as we did a great job in some cases not so much about that, we generated a lot of noise and info. And then naturally, we sort of hit the SIM phase a few years ago, where it just happened to be that we said there's too much info to properly process all of this. And so we started seeing people push back against what we've now labeled as alert fatigue, and other items. But I think, to Josh's point, right, is if we're so busy being reactive and just trying to catch up with everything that's coming our way, where do we have time to become proactive and actually go on the, address security from from a proactive, but just an anticipatory perspective.
Oh, that's
it really
true.
is.
Yeah.
It really is, an interesting thing to consider. How important is it to be able to be proactive and to be doing things like threat hunting? And if you think about the structure or what happens when an attack happens, the attack occurs, and so then all your preventative and protection controls have the opportunity to not only detect but alert and then mitigate an attack. And that's fantastic. That's best case scenario right there. You're not going to, stopping the attack, you're not going to, attacker's going to attack, right? But being able to go and stop the attack is best case. But if you're unable to do that for whatever reason, maybe it's something like the environment's too sensitive to, have a automatic response in place or something like that. Then what you do is you look at your detection capabilities, your automated detection capabilities. This is going to be all your ML, all your baseline, everything that the kitchen sink, right? And if that fails, you're in dwell time, where you've spent your security budget to go and build a technology stack that is designed to prevent this from ever happening. So I kind of think about it as it's a challenge, because you don't want to believe that you have to go look there, but you still have to look there, because it's possible that something has gotten through, and you're in that dwell time. And the only way to break dwell time is through threat hunting. It's the difference between having an internal detection and an external detection, that an adversary is, in your environment. Do you want to get a letter saying that somebody's noticed you've been compromised? You sure don't want that. You don't want to be compromised, period. But you sure want to make sure that you find it yourself if it's there. And so, the only way to really push back against that dwell time is to be proactive and to be doing that threat hunting.
No, that's a good point. I think we had, when we set out to detect, and when we were in the eras of IDSs and gathering all the log data and firewall data and trying to look through it, we knew there were things there. We just didn't have the ability or the machine learning or the AI or the processing or even the storage to even start searching through it, right? And that was one of the early challenges of this business was that lack of visibility and not really even being able to start threat hunting, because you were just dealing with incoming alerts that you had to mark real or not real, right? So
right.
Fantastic.
And then Josh, you bring up a really interesting concept around the dwell time. One of the things that I've always struggled with cybersecurity is we look at the statistics, and breach or incident rates are high 90s to 100%, right? Just regarding of the report you pull, but you never see much lower than that. So you always realize that at some stage, if you operate in today's world, you're going to experience a security incident of some kind. And one of the big struggles that I've always had with cybersecurity when we pitch it a certain way is that when you think about it from that purely preventative approach, when something gets by, then cybersecurity has failed. And the reality is things will get by. So how do I get to what we then like to preach around resilience, which is that ability to recover and come back from the attack? And really, that's what differentiates, in my opinion, mature organizations that's got a handle on it. It's not the ability necessarily to just keep the attackers out, but it's how quickly do I come back and recover from that. But you can only start that part of the resilience journey, Josh, to your point, is when you get past that dwell time, right? And that's a really good point. How do you accelerate people out of that dwell time to actually get to the real threat?
No, that's really good. And one of the items that I wanted to touch on, and we touched on buzzwords a little bit, and I feel like it's our job as security practitioners to help clients cut through that, right? Cut through that and understand those things. And there's been a lot of press lately about the MITRE attack evaluation. And Josh, I know you spend a lot of time there. I know I've read some of your articles on this, and I would love to hear you talk a little more and maybe simplify a bit for our group here. What is the MITRE ATT&CK framework? How are the tests different? And what can you shed in terms of information for us on there?
So one of the challenges that I had as analyst, I was responsible for the EDR waves at Forrester. And it was very frustrating for me that I was unable to perform efficacy testing. I could go through and have these vendors show me that they have capabilities and features, and I could get an understanding of what the user experience is like to be interacting with something, in some theoretical compromise, what does the response capabilities look like? And I can measure all these things, but I couldn't measure how well they were able to detect bad. And really, that's what we're here talking about today that's really what we care the most about. And so MITRE introduced, 2.5 years ago, they had their first attack evaluation. And at the time, there was very few testing houses in the market that were testing EDR type products. And there wasn't a very transparent methodology to what was happening. You weren't able to look at the results and really glean anything out of it. And so I found that was very unfortunate. And so when the MITRE team started publishing they published the first evaluation, I looked at it and I said, wow, this is fantastic. Because what they publish is essentially a scientific data set where they tell you that this is the operation that was performed and this is how it was detected or observed by the product itself. So there's good and bad to that. The good is that you can actually look at these results and dig in as deep as you want to go and come up with your own assessment. Fantastic. Most of us don't have time for that. So what would the value be of such a wonderful, open, transparent test if you can't really get anything out of it? And so I've spent the last few years working to break that. Every year I publish source code to a GitHub repo that will go through and pull down all the data about the vendors and give you data points for you to go about it, analyzing what's there. And as of this year, it's really exciting that they've started publishing some of the metrics that I've used in the past to make it easier, and also breaks any kind of conflict of interest because now I happen to work for one of these vendors. But the way that I would approach the analysis of the data, you're going to hear different vendors talking about different data points. There's really 3 critical data points to understand. There's the protection capability, which was newly added this year. And as we already addressed, that's really the first and most impactful place that you're going to stop an attack. So I would argue that that's your number one priority when you're shortlisting vendors. Then after that, you look at the analytics score. And the analytics score tells you how well the product is able to identify, for instance, the appropriate attack technique that was used, or describing, plain English, what happened. And so the analytics score is really a measurement of the analytic capability of the product to do detection. And so that, I would say, is really the second important metric to consider. You start with the prevention, and then you consider what the automated detection is going to look like. And then, as we've been discussing through the course of this session, the ability to threat hunt is how you break the dwell time. And so visibility is really, in my opinion, it's the third priority, but it's critical to understand, what data is available for your threat hunters to be able to go back and do an investigation or a threat hunt to find bad.
So, and that level of analysis, and first of all, thank you for doing it, because I don't think all of us can spend time going through that data and reviewing it that way. But when we're as customers out there shopping for an EDR or looking to replace our next gen AV with something like this, how do we, is there is there different weights that I would put on those different pieces as customized to myself, or is there like a clear winner, clear number, right? Besides saying Palo Alto Networks, how do I get there to that final answer, right? And what is there a shortcut to get there without having to do analysis paralysis on EDR, right?
Well, the way that I would approach this is, as I outlined, I prioritize things based on, protection first, because that's going to keep you from having service desk tickets. And so your biggest cost savings is going to come from having more effective protection. Then detection, and then visibility being the third metric that you would prioritize. And if you want to get a shortcut to get this information, all the information is available on the MITRE website. But also, and unfortunately, I don't have a slide with the URL to my GitHub repo. But if you search for my name, Josh Zelonis, you'll come up with the 3 projects that have published over the last few years that talk about it. And if you go and download the, I have Excel spreadsheets in the repo for this year. Make it super easy for you. And if you want to prioritize things based on visibility first, then you just work in Excel, sort it based on however you want, and you will get the information that is going to be important to you. An example of why somebody would want to prioritize something differently. Let's say that I'm an incident response provider. So I'm going into an environment knowing that something bad has already happened. My job is to go hunt around and find it. I don't have time to sit around and wait to collect telemetry and get automated detections based on whatever the adversary is doing. And you don't want to pay me $400, $500 an hour US to be sitting there and doing that. So what I would prioritize as an IR provider might be something with a higher visibility score than a protection score, because I already know bad's happened and executed. I just have to find what is there and what artifacts are available in the environment for me to perform an investigation. But if I'm running an enterprise SOC, you can better believe that I'm going to prioritize protection and then detection.
No, that's fantastic. One of the areas that I also wanted to touch on, and I think that would be we'll make sure to look for that, and I think maybe we even try to share the link to your GitHub. I think it'd be fantastic to have users click around and figure out what makes sense for them in terms of detection. But one of the areas that we constantly see in our we've done a security study with the Canadian market now going on 5 years in a row, and one constant piece that we see is that there is a shortage of security analysts. Security, really building a security operations center is highly complicated and hard to hire and hard to retain. And one of the hopes in the market is that automation or AI and ML will make a difference. Do you think, with the advent of more AI and ML tools, do you see the potential of us having, a smaller SOC being able to kind of bridge the gap, the hiring gap with using those technologies? Are the robots coming for our jobs today, tomorrow, or when, I guess is the question, right? And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't like to position it as the robots are coming for your jobs. The point here isn't to be, getting caught up, right? I started this discussion talking about getting proactive. And so the benefit that you get from automation is that it helps you become proactive. It helps you free up those FTEs so that you can go and look, if you need to downsize, that's what you do. You know, budget constraints are budget constraints. As security people, a lot of the time we don't get to win that fight the way that we'd like to. And I mean, we're never going to get all the money that we'd like. But the thing is that automation does help streamline what you're doing. And I will use Palo Alto Networks as an example. You know, we have 10,000 employees. We have an 8-person SOC, 24/7. Now we have people on call, but for the most part, these are 9-to-5ers based in, you know, in California. And, you know, we have automated processes for going and managing threats as they are detected, and, you know, spend our spare time performing threat hunting. So, you know, we talk about how difficult it is to hire a SOC team. 7, 8 people, I don't know that that's exorbitant. And, you know, for organizations that is, you know, it may make sense to be leveraging some type of managed threat hunting in order to compensate for your inability to necessarily get proactive or have the expertise to be going and looking for these more abstract indicators or tendencies that you're going to be trying to find.
Yeah, and I guess that's the, you know, the bottom line there is that we're by going proactive, we save a lot of time. What we've been sort of in this treadmill of being reactive and doing incident response and then getting back and doing lessons learned and all the pieces that we don't need to do if we can be more and more proactive and shift towards that side of the house, right?
And automation isn't just on the tail end of things, and that's important to consider when you look at a product like our Cortex XDR solution. You know, we're pumping data into our data lake from multiple sources: network, endpoint, cloud, identity, and we're stitching it all together so that it's easier. Well, first of all, it enables us to do an automated root cause analysis. So, you know, that's great. But you know, that's something that EDR has been doing for a while in the context of an endpoint. What gets exciting when you start stitching together all this other telemetry, what you end up with is that you're able to do a root cause analysis against your environment. And so, as I was talking about with the MITRE evaluation and how they measure analytic detections, you know, think about how it would up-level your security operations team and how it would optimize their time if instead of an alert that, hey, something bad happened, it's, hey, we noticed this pattern of bad behavior. We were able to label it with the appropriate attack techniques as they happened, and it's all stitched together across multiple sources of telemetry. And you're getting a full, rich picture, and really, that's the first thing that your SOC is probably doing in the triage stage anyway. And so all that automation, like, think about your mean time to close, if you will. I mean, the whole getting from the red light turning on to, all right, you know, we have an indictment or we can dismiss this, is just absolutely streamlined. And, you know, that's another important way to think about, you know, what automation is bringing to you today and how it's helping you get proactive.
How do you go ahead, Theo?
So I just want to weigh in on that one, Josh. Like, that's an interesting way of thinking of it, right? Because so often when we get into that automation discussion, it's around how do I put less workload on my people. But it's what I find is really important when you have to consider that is there's this, you know, this concept of confirmation bias. And I know, Josh, that's a topic near and dear to your heart from listening to one of your other talks as well. And what I find is if you put people on a repetitive task enough times and they get bored with it, they start they expect that behavior for the action that they're performing, right? And you're feeding that confirmation bias. And if that is happening, how are you exploring those other areas? And if automation is only at the tail end of remediating and sort of doing then you're missing that value in the upfront, which gets us out of that confirmation bias. It gets us to look at those areas that we're not used to, and it gets us past that. Like it closes that mean time to detect and that mean time to respond, as you had mentioned earlier, Josh.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, fatigue is well documented on the impact that it has on people. You know, you look at truck drivers, long distance truck drivers, how, you know, over time they get that highway sickness or whatever it's, you know, it's called, where, you know, you become blind to the things around you because you're just so mentally exhausted by looking at the same thing over and over and over. It makes it difficult for you to be able to differentiate. And when that happens, I mean, how do you even know when your analysts are kind of falling into that? And so the best way to do it is to keep them sharp and keep them excited and keep rotating the tasks that they're working on. And again, I'm going to throw threat hunting out there because, you know, it is such an important capability to build toward. You know, mix it up.
Yeah, no, I think, and you know, now I'm putting myself in the shoes of our clients and saying, okay, so I've got 1.5 FTE, and I've got a network that I need to watch for. My guys are also in charge of firewall management. They're in charge of everything every day. And this guy from California tells me that I should hire a threat hunter and automate things, right? How do I get from here to there, right? How do I, tell my guy tomorrow that we need to start looking at automation? And how do we identify those initial automation things that can save my time? I know it's a bonus question, but I'm curious, if you have a thought or an idea on that one.
You know, it's funny. Every once in a while I hear conversations popping up around the internet. You know, people talking about, oh, what should we automate? You know, and really the interesting perspective that I want to give you on this, especially with regard to, you know, our XSOAR product, is to start thinking about how you have used automation in the past without really thinking about it. Thinking about how you have platform independent languages. Earlier today, I was talking to somebody about Perl, right? What a horrible language that was. But, you know, going back 20 years ago, it was a fantastic language that was, you know, platform independent, that you could go, and because it's an interpreted language, and it's a scripting language, you weren't going to write, you know, something in Java to go, you know, run batch jobs or something, you know, as a sysadmin. But really, SOAR is an extension of that. And the integrations with your entire infrastructure that come with the SOAR product enables your analysts to write code, scripts, if you will, that are going to interact with and perform these repetitive tasks and optimize their job doing it. You were talking about firewall management. Sounds like a great use case.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the most popular use cases we see is, you know, phishing. You know, if you detect a phishing attack, how do you go about removing it from everybody's inbox? You know, this level of automation and scalability, the giving your analyst the power to script and decide for themselves how they could optimize their time, is going to pay you dividends.
Fantastic. That's good. It takes a shift in mentality as well, right? To say this is my job that I do on a day-to-day basis, and which parts of it, you know, does not require my thinking, right? Does not require, that could be highly automated. And what are the things that I really want to do as an analyst on a day-to-day basis versus what is the rote work that I'm doing, for sure.
I want to quickly ask Evo, sorry, like if people have questions online, please start dropping that into the chat box for us. Let's get that to the folks, and so they can pose that as well. We've got a little bit of time, but I'll let you start asking questions. A comment from my side, maybe that I've really enjoyed about watching the SOAR, and I think there's a lot more potential here, is that again, we kind of go back to that engineering mind frame sometimes and start thinking about automation in terms of what can I do with my technologies. But I think one of the great uses for me that I see too is looping in my end users, right? Like what can I do with automation to bring the experience back to the end user? So in Josh's phishing attack, can I yank the emails out? But can I use SOAR in a manner that the people that were more affected by the attack than others, that I can bring custom or relevant content back to them? We see that fail on user awareness training time and again. You clicked on the phishing attack, so you get to sit through the half-an-hour corporate standard again. You get to print another certificate that you pin up in your cubicle pre-COVID days. Now you have to masking tape it up at home. But like it's that we just do the same thing over. But can I use automation there to look at what happened, extract, maybe pull some information, and create a custom feedback element that loops that user in? And ultimately, we're doing all of this to protect the users and the data. And what can I do with automation to bridge that technology gap and actually make security more, give it more of a life cycle within organizations themselves too?
Theo, are you saying that there's a tie-in back to user awareness? Is that where you're sort of looping back to empowering the user? Is that what you're saying?
I'd say I'd say we can start thinking about it. I think you can, and then like when you look at what XDR is doing, we're moving closer to the user and the desktop. So why not, instead of just thinking about quarantining and doing sort of the standard orchestrated items that we automate, why don't we broaden that thinking? And as we have these platforms and we start talking about things like self-healing networks and systems that can troubleshoot themselves, where do we tie the user experience into that with automation and some of the capabilities that it brings us?
One of the hot topics that and I think we've got 4 more minutes until we can go to look at the Q&A and if there's any questions from the audience. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good reminder that Theo to put those in. One of the hot topics that have been kind of floating around, and it's been a bit of a decision that clients have had to make lately is, do I buy a SIEM? And where, or do I rip out my AV? I have 10,000 endpoints around the world. Do I want to do that tonight? Right? That sort of mentality. What are your thoughts and what are your recommendations for clients that are moving, down the road from AV to next gen AV to SIEM to EDR? When you're making that decision to say, okay, I'm going to go down the MDR or XDR route, or I'm going to actually take a turn here and go back to at least start collecting my logs in the SIEM. What is the balance and what is your recommendation when you talk to clients? I'm guessing it depends most of the time, but it would be interesting to hear your thoughts and what you've been recommending to your clients.
At this point, if you don't have a manner of EDR product, you are behind the maturity curve. Now, I know that that's a little scary to hear, but something to consider is that, people talk about staffing EDR products. And, what is the cost of that? Really, in the end, if you look at the cost of a breach, and paying investigators $400 an hour while you're going and deploying EDR products, which is what all the major IR companies do, is that they roll out EDR in your environment when you've been breached, and then they use the EDR product in order to hunt. So at the very, very least, the least mature organization, and I hesitate to even recommend this as a path, but you should at least have EDR deployed as a best practice so that when the IR folk come and start doing an investigation, you already have the data and you're not paying $400 an hour while you're going through that process. And I think that that's a really critical consideration that a lot of people don't think about. Now, the fidelity of the protection look, over the last 5 years or so, the traditional AV capabilities and EDR capabilities have come together into a single agent solution. So I wouldn't have separate agents. I wouldn't have separate products. I would look for, the product that is going to deliver you the efficacy that you need. And so, again, I'm using the word efficacy. MITRE does a wonderful job of showing you the efficacy of these products for a particular campaign. Is it exhaustive? No. Is it representative? I hope so. So, use the information available to you in order to figure out what product is going to deliver you what you need. If you're not threat hunting, then prioritize visibility even less.
Right.
But having data there is going to make you better. I would also say that if we're kind of looking to the future, since I've identified EDR as both a best practice and not having it being behind the maturity curve, one thing that I would say is that if you don't have a SIM yet, and you're not specifically shopping for a SIM for compliance use cases, that you should really consider XDR first. And I'm talking about XDR now as a technology category. I hope you consider Cortex XDR, of course, but consider XDR, because what you're going to get there is an integration of telemetry sources and higher fidelity detection than you would get from a SIM. And in either case, I'm going to recommend that you take a look at some manner of source solution, because the ability to manage your environment using that automation framework will pay dividends in the long run.
That's really interesting, Josh. We actually just helped a customer that was struggling with that very same thing. And they, believe it or not, they were looking at they had a very basic open source log solution. And they were sort of looking, do we go with something more commercial, or do we dive into like a XDR, EDR platform? And we did the analysis with them. And like you said, they went with the XDR platform. And it definitely, like, speed to value for return and actually improving their security posture, hands down, made the difference. Now, you said a very important item there too for me, which is compliance, right? And I think sometimes the market space loves to jump on the MDR concept and feel that that's an EDR that can replace them. But I think you have to work in your specific use cases. There's certain things for log retention, compliance-driven reporting. There are some things that a SIM still satisfy. But I agree with you. If you're starting from scratch and you want to make a difference in your security posture, get that. And we can dive into the whole boundary erosion, right? Where you look at how users are moving around these days with COVID, and we all know it's never going to return to the way it was before. That boundary has moved to the end user station, and the end user identity ideally is where we want to get at. So having that automation that protects that endpoint, look at it, and then having that orchestration tool with the automation tools that helps you deal with this variety of information is going to be critical. But I really found it interesting that because I do get customers asking, saying, so does this mean I don't need a SIM anymore? And I don't think it means it's not an either or. I think it's a sequence in which you deploy it that suits your posture and how you operate as an organization.
What data you send where? Really? When you start sending logs to XDR and the same logs to SIM, you're duplicating your log management. And so figuring out the use cases and the data that you need in order to fulfill certain needs is really going to be a difference maker for you whenever it comes down to, how am I spending my budget?
It's been and that question really has been a value conversation, right? And it's the value. It's because they never really got the SIM where they needed to get, right? They got the SIM under a promise. It was built in a certain way. It was the people process was never integrated as part of it. And now we're adding another technology, and clients are going, well, this is expensive. This is big and expensive. Is it bringing me the value that I need to get, right? And if you read between the lines of what you guys are saying, the SIM is being used as a log, as a syslog server, as a log, as a file, really a log collector at this point, right? If it's purely being used for that, trust me, you're not going to be able to justify the spend, right? So that, that's where that's come from. There are we're at 5 minutes to the hour, and there are some questions from the audience here. These are obviously Palo Alto questions, which is kind of nice to hear. And let's see how well you are with your knowledge of Palo Alto technology with these questions. The first question is, Palo Alto firewall has great identity integration with AD. It's and ironically, identity is something we barely touched on here, which is too bad. And I think we could have had another 3 hours of identity conversation. Palo Alto firewall has a great identity integration with AD. Create rules based on user and machine identity. How is this AD integration? How is this AD integration? How can it be leveraged with an EDR product? Is that is that user/identity used for the Cortex piece and leveraged as well beyond the Strata firewall product? Any knowledge on that, Josh?
Unfortunately,
Okay.
So the question was about
user identity in Cortex and an integration of the two.
So the way I read that, Josh, is firewalls. Palo Alto made a massive play with firewalls, both through application ID and then bringing the user in and writing objects and rules around user identity. How do we use Cortex XDR to bring that same user identity value to the solution?
Yes, this is all part of the detections get and able to the value that you have from your Palo Alto Networks firewalls extends into XDR. In particular, that is a strength of what we're doing. I mean, we are I'm focused on the tech side of the house. We still have networks at the end of the Palo Alto Networks name.
Yeah, absolutely. Another piece that was brought up as well is in the service integration piece. So Servicenow integration is something that you guys do as well, right? To automate incident between the EDR and Servicenow, not specifically using Servicenow as a SIM, but as an ITSM tool, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And this gets into the conversation of XOR. XOR is, look, somebody asked me the other day, why is XOR the best XOR on the market? And for me, it's the integrations and the community. Like, this is such a well-supported SOAR. I mean, if we think about who the competition is in the market with XOR, it's nobody's playing it at the level that we're playing. And so, yes, ServiceNow is one of the biggest ticketing systems in the world. We, of course, have integrations like that.
Perfect.
Do we have time for one more quick question for Josh? Or are we going to wrap it there?
I don't know if we do have time for another one.
Well, why don't we do this? Any written questions left? We'll take that away. Josh, maybe you and I can give we'll spend 15 minutes at some stage in the future, answer some of those, and we'll get those back to participants as well.
Excellent.
Perfect. Ivo, the floor is yours.
Sounds good. I wanted to make sure, we will share this information with every participant here today. There's a lot of information here that we'll share in terms of this ransomware report, this Unit 42 ransomware report that that Palo Alto is providing, the ransomware threat report, where you can learn more about what Josh has been talking about. You can find out more information that Josh is providing as well, and that Palo Alto has on this MITRE attack results. The great upside here is that there will be a wine gift basket sent to everybody who came here today. So I want to thank every participant that came. Hopefully this has been a good session, and I know I've learned a lot from it, and hopefully you have as well. So I want to thank Josh and Theo for your time, and everybody for joining us. And our marketing team will get together and send you a wine gift basket for joining us today. So it's a win-win for everybody. Again, thanks, and have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Josh. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.